And like I say, I think it's expedient for any musician or comedian or artist or writer or comic book professional, for that matter, to speak out, whatever they believe in, to actually say something rather than simply providing more acreage of bland entertainment, of stuff that is meant only to occupy another half hour or so of the audience's largely empty lives. That's not what art should be for. Art shouldn't be a sedative. It shouldn't be a palliative to make us feel better about the dismal circumstances in which we're being forced to live. Art should be a stimulant. It should be a psychedelic. It should be something which genuinely opens the mind, that gives you information that you didn't have before, and that gives you different possibilities for how to interact with the world. So I'd say that that is probably my agenda.
Great. You have a very wide range of topics and themes covered through your titles, from directly political pieces such as V for Vendetta and Watchmen, to environmental pieces, as you said, with Swamp Thing, to the metaphysical with Promethia and Neonomicon. Is there a unified message expressed throughout all these works?
They are all coming from the same person. So they will be reflecting parts of my psyche and of my interests. So, yes, I'm very interested in environmentalism. So, yes, Swamp Thing was the result of that. I'm very interested in sexuality and sexual politics. That has expressed itself through various things from Swamp Thing and Marvel Man onwards, but probably came to a culmination with Lost Girls, where I was investigating ideas about erotica and our sexual responses and when is it okay to talk about something. We were very interested in, we enjoyed doing it, me and Melinda, and we were very interested in the response because it was taken seriously as a work of art. It was not taken as a cheap pornography. And after spending 16 to 18 years on it, we were quite glad of that. I would say there's probably not a single unifying thing except for diversity itself. There is no reason why we have to specialise as human beings. Yes, I know that we're told at school that it makes the administration neater if we specialise in one subject and then go on to a job that is related to that subject. But I don't think that that's natural in terms of the human urge to learn about everything. I mean, I don't know if you've got children or know any small babies.
I know
but
some,
sort
sure.
of, well, I mean, it's sort of, you can see in the way that a baby behaves that it's a natural sponge for information. It wants to know about everything, everything in the universe. I think that that's one of my main grudges against the education system. In that, if anything, it tends to act as aversion therapy and will actually put people off learning or anything that even faintly resembles learning, so that they will very seldom read a book when they get home from work in the evening because they associate books with learning, learning with work, and work with drudgery. Instead, they'll sit on the sofa and they'll watch some soap opera, which might be tedious, boring, and pointless, but at least they can be sure that it won't be trying to teach them anything. I think that our natural inclination as human beings is towards diversity. And I think that that is true in the arts as well. I mean, like, I always try to encourage my own daughters, you know, you don't have to be one thing. You can be 50 things if you like. You know, it's sort of so, yes, I can write very well. And I can write in a number of areas very well. I write very good songs and sort of write good comics, and I think that this novel that I'm doing at the moment is pretty good. Pretty good. I'm not so good as an artist, but I enjoy drawing. So I continue to try to express myself through art. I am no good as a musician, but I can carry a tune, and I'm a fairly good performer. I can talk to an audience. There's no reason why I shouldn't explore all of these things. There's no reason why anybody shouldn't explore all of these things. Having spent a decade at least, railing against the film industry and its idiocies, I am perversely also involved with a short 10-minute film at the moment. You know, there's no reason to limit yourself. Yes, it makes it easier for society to pigeonhole you, but what is to society's advantage is not necessarily to yours. And I would advise people to be as diverse and various as they have a will to be. You know, and that is probably, if there is a message, right the way across my books, in the sexual politics, the straightforward politics, the material about metaphysics and magic, the environmentalism, there's no need to limit yourself. In the case of magic, there's no need to even limit yourself to strict rationality. You know, the mind is a free and open place. And we've got some extraordinary things in here if we just bother to look for them and to dig them out. So I am trying, I suppose, in the breadth of my work, to show what a single human imagination is capable of. And that's not just my human imagination. Mm-hmm. Imagination is like a muscle, as I think Peter Blegvad said. Imagination is a muscle that will increase with exercise. And I think that that is true. That sort of, none of us have got great imaginations when we start out. My first few stories are frankly dull. I haven't really put myself in to the mother lode of my imagination. But, you know, you do this stuff every day of your working life for a few years, and unless you're particularly dense, you're going to learn a few tricks, you're going to learn a few things, you're going to, importantly, learn how to connect with your own, I believe, sacred and holy human imagination, which is the doorway to everything, to all material success, to all metaphysical or moral or intellectual success. You have to be able to imagine a state before you can possibly get there. Imagination is the key to anything, and it's capable of some extraordinary things. And if there's one thing that all of my work is saying, it is probably that. You know, check out your own imagination, see what it can do. I think that you'll genuinely be surprised.
You've already kind of answered some of this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What place does speculative fiction, storytelling, and other forms of art have in activism and the social change movement?
Well, speculative fiction, good term, it's sort of, when I was 14, this would have been before I had plunged into the world of 60s counterculture as completely and disastrously as I did a few years later. But when I was 14, I was a huge fan of Michael Moorcock's. I was a huge fan of his Elric stories, his sword and sorcery. And so when I heard that he was the editor of a magazine, a science fiction magazine called New Worlds, I thought, oh, this sounds fantastic. I bet it's going to be full of stories about sickly albino barbarians with their soul-drinking rune swords. You know, well, I was 14. I was emotionally unbalanced in the way that all 14-year-olds are. And Mike Moorcock did write some very, very good sort of sword and sorcery stories. I picked up New Worlds and realised at the age of 14 that it wasn't anything like any science fiction that I'd previously read. This was proper speculative fiction. It was people like J.G. Ballard and M. John Harrison, John Sladek, wonderful writers, and Moorcock himself, of course. A couple of American imports like Samuel Delany and Norman Spinrad. And this was incredibly radical. So it seemed that Moorcock had hijacked the term science fiction and made it a vehicle for modernist experimental fiction, which was incredible. It was a real rush. And the stories, not all of them were instantly understandable. Some of them were cryptic or oblique, but they all spoke of a different world that was approaching, quite an alarming world, that was nothing like the standard science fiction idea of how we're going to expand into space and colonize all these planets and make them just like the Western world back here on Earth. No, this was much more full of radical doubt. It suggested that the future would not be full of robots and ray guns and spaceships and adventures, that it would be full of chaos and psychological collapse and a world where people had got no idea what was going on or how they should react to it anymore. The world of J.G. Ballard with his people becoming obsessed with celebrity car crashes. How strange and alien that seemed at the time. You know, this was, of course, before we'd had a Princess die to see what that kind of stuff is like in real life. Or John Sladek with his apparently irrelevant obsession with cryptography and codes. You know, as if the future was going to have anything to do with cryptography and codes. But actually, that's how it turned out. You know. So, in the speculative fiction of the New World School, which was radical, yes, there was an awful lot of different political possibilities and artistic possibilities being communicated, rather than the actually reassuring and reactionary old school science fiction, which is just saying that, yes, the future of the human race is glorious and we're going to be able to keep doing what we're doing now, but all over the galaxy. Which actually, no, that's not going to happen. The new wave science fiction writers had got it right. It's very doubtful that we're ever going to get beyond the confines of this solar system, because we have neglected to actually take care of the one habitable place that we happen to be living.